Hello again, YouTube. This is Dave the Mechanic. Today I'm working on a 2007 Lexus LS460. Today I'll be changing the starter, and this is what the starter for your LS460 should look like. There's a cover for you. One more time. This is what it should look like. Alright, let's go ahead and disconnect this negative terminal on this battery. I already have the car in the air. I'm using my jack, and I placed it on the part of the little thin frame that runs on the side, and I have a jack stand right behind that, and I have a jack stand. It's not really making contact, but it's a part of the frame that runs more to the middle, just to be extra safe. A quick note: if you're not using the impact, you should probably break these lugs before you raise the car all the way into the air. Otherwise, it's just gonna spin and you try to get those off with a four-way or breaker bar. So I'll be using the impact today, which is why I left it on. Once you have the tire off, then we can go to the next step, which would be removing this bottom plate right here. It's like a cover. There's 10mm bolts, two 10mm bolts. And in the back, we have two 14mm bolts on one side and the same on the other side. We're gonna get that removed. Once you get those 6 bolts down, it'll drop down, and there's a little hook right here. Drop it and push it forward, and it should fall down. Next, we're gonna remove this sway bar. It's connected 2 bolts here, and it's also connected at the end here to the sway bar link. We get those off on this side and the same ones on the other side. We should be able to get that bar down. Alright, I have the sway bar removed. Now I have to remove this part of the frame right here. There's 2 bolts here and 2 bolts here. They're 14mm, real easy to remove. It also takes this with it. This is like a little plastic cover. No need to remove that. It's gonna remove along with this part. 2 of the bolts that you remove, you're gonna notice on the back side, you're gonna have a part like this. Make sure to keep it, of course, for putting it back on. Now with this part of the frame removed, we can have a clear shot to see our catalytic converter. This is the O2 sensor. We have to remove that. There's a 10mm bolt here. That's part of the cover that has to be removed. And the main 2 bolts on the back side of this catalytic converter is right here and here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get a wire brush, and we're gonna clean the back side, these threads, to make sure that that bolt will come off all the way easily. And we're also going to, after we clean it, we're going to spray it down with some PB Blaster after it's cleaned. And we're going to let that sit for a little while we work on the rest. My next move is to remove this motor mount up in here. So what I did was I set my jack stand. Some people put it underneath the oil pan. I think it's real soft. I just set it right up underneath here between the engine and the transmission. To me, I feel like that's a little harder, and it's definitely not gonna go anywhere. As far as which bolts have to be removed, at the very bottom there's a bolt right here. Well, there's a nut right here that enables it to lift up and out, and there's a small 10mm bolt here that releases the dipstick tube, and I'm willing to bet there's at least 6 or 7 bolts that actually hold this mount on. I can see at least 3, 1, 2, 3 here on the bottom, and I can see 1 up here on top, and I'm willing to bet that there's let me see, it looks like there's 1 right here. All right, we're going to start by clearing this engine bay. So we're going to remove all this top covering, especially this one for the battery. There's a couple of tabs. There's already some missing, but I'm going to remove these tabs. There's a bunch of little tabs here. If you have a tool like this or a flathead screwdriver, you should be able to get in and underneath and pull them up. I'm going to do the same thing all around. And as for this middle piece, you should be able to just pull straight up on the sides as well. And with that, you should be able to get that middle piece up. So I'm going to go ahead and finish popping off all the outside pieces. When you get to this one, you have to pull up. I'll show you where it's snapped in. Spot snapped in here, 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 and here. All you have to do is pull up firmly in the corners, and that will get this piece up and off. We're going to leave this side on for now, unless proven otherwise. There's 2 10mm bolts to get this part of the intake off. Go ahead and remove those. Once you remove these 2 10mm bolts, all you have to do is pull up on this rubber right here on the corners, and squeeze and pull, and then same thing on the other side. Already did the other side, and this should come right off. All right, let's go ahead and disconnect this negative terminal on this battery. Now let's go ahead and drain this coolant. There's a drain on the bottom right here. Get your container. Now I'm going to use the pliers and turn counterclockwise. That will break the seal. And I can go ahead and start to unthread that. There we go. And now our coolant is draining. Once your coolant is drained, we can go ahead and remove this hose clamp here, and there's a hose clamp right down here. You can remove those, and 2 10mm bolts, and we should be able to remove this reservoir. All right, now we have plenty more space here, and since we're already drained the coolant, we might well remove this lower radiator hose, at least on this end, and we can move it out of the way. All right, so I removed the upper part of the lower hose, and I just tucked it underneath this line here, the transmission line, and now I have clear access to the alternator. All right, so now we need to remove the belt, and you can see the tensioner is right here. So we're gonna get this looks like a 14mm, and then put a socket on there, and we're gonna turn counterclockwise. It's gonna lower, and we'll pull that belt right off. So this is my particular setup. I have a breaker bar with a short extension and a 14mm deep socket. You can do any different combination you want. A regular 14mm socket with a longer extension, with the regular ratchet if you want to. It's not that hard to move. Just turn this counterclockwise, and then you'll be able to slip that belt right off. All right, now we have our battery already disconnected. What we're gonna do is we're going to take off our hot wire from the alternator, which is it looks from here like maybe an 11 or 12mm bolt. I had to peel back this rubber cover right here, and that exposes the bolt. So, and the reason why we have to get that off first is that cable is blocking the two upper bolts that we need to remove from our. All right, now that I have that hot wire removed, I'm able to move this cable out of the way, and I can get to my two top bolts. There is one here, and a couple of inches straight back, maybe about 3 inches straight back, there's another one. You can see it right there, and it's the same exact style on the bottom, except they're bolts. There's a bolt almost exactly on the same position here on the bottom, and a one about 3 inches away from that one on the bottom as well, and they're all 14mm. We're gonna go ahead and get those 4 bolts out now. There's also a ground wire here. You can see it runs from here to here. It looks to be about a 12mm, and yep, it is. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that ground wire as well. If you can't reach the bottom bolts from the top, once you have all the covers from the bottom removed, the 2 bottom bolts can easily be seen here and here. So you can remove those from the bottom. All right, once you have the 2 top nuts off, and the 2 bottom bolts won't actually come all the way out, they're too long. You just want to get them loose and unthreaded. Then you should be able to slide the alternator all the way over, and eventually you should be able to work your way out. I'm going to need 2 hands to get this out. All right, once you're able to slide it forward, there's a protective boot on this plug. You pull that up, you push this clip in, and you unhook that. You should be able to get the harness off. Now the alternator is pretty much out and loose. The next trip is to get it up through here. This piece of pipe right here can be tricky. If you can't finagle it out, you can you have to remove this part here, which is just a either you can use Phillips head or a 10mm socket. You can get these 2 hose clamps to loosen, and you squeeze these 2 basically clamps to get these rubber pieces off. And then there's a hose clamp here, another 10mm to get it off the throttle body. And once you get those off, you should be able to pull it back off the throttle body and pull it straight up. There's a piece down here that is basically sitting inside of. You just pull that up out of there, and this whole part should be removed. Even without pulling that up, you should be able to get it off the throttle body and slide to the left or to the right. You might have enough space to get that alternator up and out. One of the main reasons to getting this alternator out, of course, is to get the mount out. And there's a 10mm bolt that normally sits right up here that for you to get the cover, the heat cover off. So that's another reason why you move that that alternator. You have to get to the bolt to remove the heat cover. Once you remove the heat cover, then you can remove the mount. All right, we have the mount out. It actually comes out in 2 pieces. This piece comes out first, and then you're able to pull this piece up and out. So how it is, there's, let's count the bolts. There's these 2 long studs here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 short ones. So that's 6 bolts total as far as what's holding it into the motor. There was a nut that sits on top of this to keep these together. So once you're able to get that nut off, you're gonna have to basically once you get all the bolts loose, you're gonna have to basically move this around and play with the jack to where this has a lot of slop, and you can move it around and once you can move around, you'll be able to turn this enough to see the bolt and get your wrench on top. Just turn it a little bit, and then it came off easy the rest of the way. Then I'm able to pull this off and out, and then I was able to pull this up and out. Okay, now with the engine mount and the cover out of the way, we can see all of our bolts. All right, we can see all of our bolts. There's, let's see, let's make sure. Okay, there's 2 bolts on that pipe. On this pipe here, there's 2 bolts there, and back here there's 3 bolts. There's 1 here, there's 1 up top that you can't see, and there's 1 here, and then the final bolt is right up here at the top. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna spray those with some PB Blaster or some Coral or something, WD-40, and we're gonna come back before we get those out. But even before we get that, there's an O2 sensor here that you're gonna want to get out, and you might not, you shouldn't have to unplug it. You should just have to once you get it threaded out, then you should be able to tuck it back. It's gonna twist a lot because it's not unplugged, but you should be fine. And then we're gonna come back here to the 2 bolts that we sprayed before, and we're gonna get those 2 bolts out. So once those 2 bolts are out, and all of the exhaust manifold bolts are out, and the O2 sensor is out, we should be able to work this out. We have to get that whole, from the exhaust manifold to the catalytic converter, that whole one piece out, and then we can get to our starter. All right, so I got the 2 bolts out. They were 14 millimeter, and the small nut to get the hot wire off was a 12. So now it's free. I can just go ahead and work it on out. All right, now I have it out in my left hand. I'm going to use my right hand and take off that plug on the back side. All right, here's our example of the old part right next to the new part. All right, same thing going in. We're going to plug that harness in first, then we're going to get the starter set in, and we'll go from there. If you liked the video, you thought it was helpful, be sure to hit the like, subscribe button. Also, if you feel this video saved you some money, don't be afraid to leave a little tip in the Cash App. The more reactions and support that I receive is the more content that I'll make.